Scared for reals.
Hey, it's Chris O'Neill.
Adam Perry.
Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire. 70 years of Godzilla continues. We had an awesome movie last year, Godzilla -1, and now United States Toho collaboration, Godzilla X Kong, just opened up. This is like the fifth movie in that monsterverse, and it's a follow-up to Godzilla vs. Kong, obviously. 38th film of the Godzilla franchise. It's kind of true they say that. I guess it's the 38th official, but if you actually count all the Godzilla movies, it's over 40.
Wow.
So 70 years of Godzilla. We're going to be doing a lot of Godzilla films. We're going to be discussing them in full throughout the year because April brings up Godzilla versus Mothra, and there's two Godzilla movies that came out in 1964. Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. We're just going to have a lot of fun discussing Godzilla. More of a me thing because you haven't seen a lot of the Godzilla movies, have you?
I mean, I've seen a handful of them in bits and pieces. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the original Godzilla, the original King Kong. The sequels, I mean, they would be stuff I would just catch on TNT when they'd be running marathons and stuff like that. And
the badly English dub.
Yeah, and they're fun movies. They're great movies to watch. I love a good giant monster destruction movie every now and then, which is what Godzilla X and Kong was.
Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire. A few years after defeating the newer version of Mechagodzilla, Kong has his own discovery, his own place, his own territory, Hollow Earth it's called. And on the surface of the Earth, Godzilla continues to maintain order between humanity and the giant monsters known as the Titans. Basically, still the king of the monsters, you know. Now, there's a Monarch observation outpost that's kind of stationed in the outskirts of Hollow Earth. It picks up some unidentified signal. It causes Gia, the last known survivor of the Iwi tribe, to experience hallucinations, flashbacks. She's having a hard time in school. Been kind of rough. You know, she's newly adopted, and we were talking about with Ghostbusters coming of age, where do I belong in this world and all that kind of stuff. Only this one was a little more interesting to watch, in my opinion.
Right.
Not too much more, but anyway, Godzilla X Kong. There's this big sinkhole that opens up near Kong's home and discovers this uncharted region, and he kind of sees beings that look like him, kind of, and including, it's referred to as Mini Kong, Suko.
Yeah.
Kong forces Suko to lead him to the tribe's lair, and they, kind of an uneasy bond, if you will, at first, because Suko's trying to kill Kong and beat him up, and then he finally sees that Kong is not the bad guy as tribe makes him out to be. So they have a tyrannical leader, this gorilla tribe in this undiscovered region of the world, the Scar King. The Scar King kind of is more of a bully than anything because he's more of a fear-mongering tyrant, kind of like our government is. He uses this ice-powered titan to do all of his dirty work, basically. I mean, you literally see he has this sharp-pointed object that kind of controls the ice creature, and he just wreaks havoc on whomever he wants. So he's just an evil dictator. By the way, we're doing some spoiler alerts here. This movie just opened up. So if you haven't seen Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire, go see it first and then listen to what we're going to be discussing here. The Scar King battles Kong with the aid of that ancient ice-powered titan. Shimo is her name. The Scar King controls, it's a knife-like crystal. That's what I'm reading here in the description. So Kong, he has some help, thankfully. He has Mothra, who's kind of come back. That's the thing about Mothra. A lot of people are like, how can she keep coming back? Well, first of all, it's a fantasy monster film. You got to got to leave your brain at the door.
Yeah, we're talking about a 300-foot dinosaur lizard and a 300-foot silverback ape. Yeah, suspend disbelief a little bit.
With 100 some odd foot giant moth that has all these powers. Basically, Mothra helps out Godzilla. Well, in this monster universe, brings order to the chaos, if you will.
Right.
So Mothra, you've got Kong, you've got Godzilla. They all team up together, and I know Kong gets this new awesome arm cover shield type thing. There's like scientific mumbo jumbo for it, but basically Monarch created it. It was one of their abandoned projects. Kong kicks some massive butt with that. Massive hook there.
Right.
They all kind of join forces, try to defeat the Scar King, and if you really think about it, the plot here just is so razor thin. Again, you got to suspend some disbelief here. You've got a new character, and Dan Stevens is a hoot as Trapper, isn't he?
Yeah.
Now, I've seen him in Downton Abbey. He was, I think it was a movie called The Guest, which was made a few years after that.
Yep.
Kind of a different role. He's doing these different types of roles. I've seen him in a few things, but he's different in every movie. He's having fun with it. Him and Brian Tyree Henry are both very funny playing off each other. Brian's kind of been typecast as the geeky, nerdy, aloof guy who comes up with these wisecracks all the time. He's still doing his big blog podcast kind of thing.
Conspiracy theory podcast.
Yeah. And he's, walking around with a camera, and of course Trapper and him are quipping jokes.
Yeah.
Kind of the equivalent of Chris Rock and Joe Pesci and Lethal Weapon.
Kind of, yeah.
That's the kind of vibe, only not as obnoxious. But that part of the movie's fun. Rebecca Hall returning, and her and the girl are trying to connect, and of course she's worried that now that she's found the lost Iwi tribe, she found her home. She's worried that, okay, well, she's going to leave now that she's found her home. And a lot of those smaller subplots going on in the movie, some of them aren't necessary. We were talking about length of movies. I talk about it to death.
Right.
But those classic Showa era Godzilla movies, and even the newer ones in the 90s, they're like 90 minutes, 80 to 90 minutes long. Again, we get these almost 2-hour running time movies that are they don't necessarily need to be that long. They really don't. And this one drags some.
It drags some. I'll agree with that. But at the same time, I mean, comparing it to when we talked last week about Frozen Empire, the subplots, and especially the coming of age story, where I felt Frozen Empire over-explained and just put so much in there. I felt they under-explained here. And a lot of that just had to do with there's so much going on. Until the last 30 minutes, you have literally two different stories going on, with one with Kong and one with Godzilla. It's almost confusing to kind of keep track of what the hell's going on until...
Well, it's such a razor-thin plot, too.
Yeah.
At the same time. They have all of these different subplots going on, but at the same time, it's so razor-thin.
Yeah.
I agree. They could have made a couple of different movies out of this. They could have just made one with Godzilla and one with Kong, and maybe at the end of one of them, they kind of see them join together or something.
Yeah.
I mean, they just can't seem to focus on like one thing anymore.
That's kind of how I felt as I was watching this movie last night. Like, you'd go into a Kong sequence and you'd start to really get invested in what's going on with Kong, and then boom, we're back at Godzilla, and then you start to get invested with what Godzilla's doing.
Right.
And now you're back to the crew in Middle Earth. And
right.
So it's like, and then even like, I liked the crew from Middle Earth. Like I said, I like those I'm terrible with names, but I liked the interaction and the relationship between the podcasting guy and the monster veterinarian.
Very interesting. And again, you just have to go with it. Because it's like somehow it's so kind of over the top, silly, pulling Kong's tooth out, putting that metal tooth in, and then putting on the big, powerful monarch abandoned arm.
Yeah.
If you will.
But you know what? Some things in this movie were just so random, and
yes,
it almost felt like it didn't fit, because like other than like the score, there's no music in this movie, and then all of a sudden, as the guy goes to get the new mechanical arm we're rocking out to Kiss. Now, don't get me wrong, I love me a good "I Was Made for Loving You" montage. It was just like out of nowhere, we're rocking out to Kiss.
Well, just like I grew up, I loved Twilight Zone by Golden Earring.
Yeah, that too.
Random needle drops that really don't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, like all of a sudden, it was almost like we're watching Guardians of the Galaxy spin with these pop culture music hits, that just came out of nowhere.
As I mentioned, Rebecca Hall Andrews and the little girl Gia, along with Trapper and Bernie Hayes, the conspiracy theorist podcaster, they all traveled to the Hollow Earth to locate the source of the signal, find that monarch outpost. They have this temple, which again leads to Gia's long lost Iwi tribe. Mm-hmm. She thought they were all destroyed, but they actually went underground. And again, they don't really develop that part of the plot too much. You just got to go with it, man.
It's just kind of there, yeah.
It just kind of go with it. While observing Gia socializing with the Iwi, Andrew, fears... voices her fears to Trapper. There's a little history with them. They used to date and they almost got married, but he's kind of not grown up in a lot of ways. He's just focused on his work. He has a lot more fun doing that. Bernie actually refers to him as like a hippie 60s dude or something. Yeah. Kind of shows he's just kind of chill about everything. Nothing seems to like really faze him or bother him.
Yeah. And again, that's the thing where, like I was saying earlier, like it's like Frozen Empire, where they would have taken that interaction between those two who obviously have a relationship and beat us to death with it. They just kind of subtly hint at it and let it go, and they're like kind of leave you, well, what's really going on between these two?
You're talking about Rebecca Hall's character?
Rebecca Hall's in the,
and Trapper.
Trapper, yeah.
They kind of sum it up in like a couple sentences, no oomph.
Yeah.
They just kind of explain it in a couple of throwaway lines.
Yeah.
And you're off. So Gia, at this time, she really doesn't know why she's hearing voices, hallucinating. I mean, she's literally scribbling on desks at school. So when they go into this, they find this long-lost Iwi tribe, inside this temple. They see all these prophecies laid out. The Scar King seeks to conquer the surface world and wage war against Godzilla's species. That part was kind of like, huh? Did you like kind of scratch your head at that whole prophecy?
Yeah.
Somehow they almost kill Godzilla, the Scar King, and you find out why, because of that frozen monster there.
Right.
But the whole movie, it's like up to that point, you see Godzilla constantly consuming all this nuclear energy, and then at the end, you know why.
Yeah.
I'm glad, in a way, I'm kind of glad they didn't destroy that ice creature, because the ice creature was being manipulated, by this crystal. So, again, it.
So what do you think? Like the one fight we get between Godzilla and King Kong, it literally looks like a WWF wrestling match.
Yeah, literally. He picks him up and body
gives him
slams
a German suplex.
Yeah, suplex. That's what it was. Yeah, and
it was almost comical, but like as they're stirring the pyramids of Giza.
Yeah, well, and that's Godzilla never runs in his movies, but again, as much as I kind of criticize that, I think back to the Showa era where he's like spinning across the ground on his tail. Right. And then he's like flying in the air. Yeah. It's like, okay, and him dancing, doing a little victory dance. Right. But the amazing thing about that, though, I didn't gripe as much at that because that's a guy in a suit doing all that. This is all computers.
Computers, yeah.
Which is unfortunate. But so Godzilla defeats Tiamat in the Arctic in order to absorb the radiation for the layer, as we're mentioning. He has to consume all this energy, and again, these monsters. Tiamat was kind of a cool character, but again, if it was Godzilla's own movie, that would have been something. But you split this movie into two parts. You have one movie with Godzilla gathering all this nuclear energy, defeating these monsters, and then you have Kong discovering a lost gorilla tribe, and then they meet up and. in the third movie, and to have that be the climax, that would not be a good payoff for a three-part story arc. But again, you see like more than one screenwriter involved. There was like at least 3 writers for this. You're going to get kind of a mess, right? And that it was okay. You can only do so much with like 3 different ideas, and that's what made the Hobbit trilogy suffer so much, because you had a little Del Toro, a little Peter Jackson, and I think there was another I think it might have been his wife, his partner, but it's like you get 1 or 2 screenwriters, okay, but the only exception I can think of where there was like 4 or 5 screenwriters was Once Upon a Time in the West. Bertolucci helped write the screenplay, though. You got Bernardo Bertolucci, who is one of the greatest. You had Dario Argento helping write Once Upon a Time in the West, and Sergio Leone, and there was a couple others. Like, okay, that's the only exception I can think of. Right. Patton, maybe, but it most part, when you have more than one screenwriter, you get a convoluted mess. They kind of pasted it together so it wasn't too bad. Just don't think too hard. Just don't think too hard. So, again, after undoing Shimo's Ice Age, because that's the thing, she was controlled by the Scar King, and after he gets frozen and don't you like how King Kong just, after he's frozen, just smashes him to pieces and stuff like that? So the Scar King is destroyed, so is the crystal. So, they kind of like almost make Shimu smile a little bit at Godzilla. So it's like, I hope they don't make that into anything,
Right.
Because that was kind of like, what was the point of that close up, Mm-hmm. So after undoing Shimo's Ice Age, which is like, if you think about it, that was the climax of the movie, which is it was okay after like an hour and a half, hour 45 minutes, and that's the big climax. It almost felt like it wasn't that big of a deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just like a forced build up, and there wasn't really a lot of depth to it either.
Yeah, I was thinking, remembering back to Godzilla versus Kong, the climax of that movie, it's almost like they went too much, and then this one they went too little.
I kind of agree with you in a certain way. I mean, they could have tightened up the action sequences because it was King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yeah.
They have to get together to fight Mecha Godzilla.
Yeah.
That was an interesting surprise to the movie.
Right.
It was a little over the top, to say the least, and it was over 2 hours.
Yeah.
So they could have tightened up the action sequences and kept a couple of the key ones in there, but and to have them fight again, I mean...
Well, I kind of understood that, because at the end of Kong versus Godzilla, they kind of go to their separate corners, and it's like a mutual understanding. You don't cross over, we won't have a problem.
Kind of, so I didn't get that sense of uneasiness at the end in their relationship, It was like they respected each other, but it was... kind of, okay, we need to have a big King Kong Godzilla moment in there, and again it was forced.
Right.
So let's make it a wrestling match. Battle of the Titans.
Yeah.
I think there were some wrestling WWE matches like the Battle of the Titans.
I'm sure there were back in the 80s and 90s.
WEF or whatever it was. There's so many. There was like 3 or 4 growing up wrestling organizations.
Oh, there were. Knowing the wrestling business like I do, at one point there were territories all over the place. There was wrestling everywhere until Vince McMahon basically monopolized it until leaving just a few. But that's a different story and maybe a different podcast.
Right. So let's getting back to Godzilla X Kong, the New Empire. You have this big reawakening of Mothra. This was the thing that bothered me. You have this big reawakening of Mothra, who's a major character in, you go back to the Showa era movies. And she awakens. She does a little bit of battle to fight off some of the apes or gorillas. Apes.
Well,
But there's nothing with her character after everything's all said and done. It's like, what happened?
Right.
They don't have anything with Mothra after she has that big fight sequence where all of them are fighting inside that underground lair. Mm-hmm. Did you notice that? It was like she just disappeared.
Just went away, yeah.
And it was like, okay, let's see if there's anything in the post-credits. No, nothing. So it's kind of like Mothra thrown in there to help get Kong and Godzilla together. And then, okay, I'll throw in a few, the gorilla gang there, and then I'm gone. They don't explain it, which is kind of upsetting because why have her in the movie? Yeah,
but again, there was so much into this movie.
But to just have a major character like that just disappear without any explanation, it was like, why?
Right.
Why?
Yeah.
You have. It was supposed to be a big deal, and they focus on it for a good 15 minutes, and then she awakens, she stops the fight between Kong and Godzilla, and then she helps do battle inside their temple there when they find a way to get through because of the Shimo there, and that's it.
Right.
She's gone, and we don't know what happened to her. She kind of just okay. And it is funny how Godzilla returns to that Colosseum, that Rome Colosseum.
Oh, yeah. This is a new favorite bed, the Roman Colosseum. Yeah,
which he kind of destroyed.
Yeah,
this is a little resting spot. That's probably one of your
champ.
Yeah, he's the champ.
Yeah,
yeah. Where Bruce Lee famously defeated Chuck Norris.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
But yeah, so Godzilla returns right there. Kong, he, together with Shimu, Suko returns to Hollow Earth, where he's the new leader of that tribe. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if they're gonna do something else with that. They probably will, because the movie's going to make a lot of money.
Right.
And Gia alleviates Andrew's fears by choosing to stay with her adopted mom, and she even says, "My home is with you." It's like, oh, Yeah. Didn't that warm your heart, Adam?
A little bit.
Did it flutter? Did you cry?
No.
But it wasn't a great movie, but it was fun enough to warrant a 3-star rating. I was kind of debating if I was going to give it like a 2.5 or something, but I would just say it's close enough to a 3-star movie for me.
I give this like a, in my weird ranking, give this like a 2.7, 2.8. It's a fun one-time watch. The same way I felt about Kong versus Godzilla. It was a fun one-time watch. It's not anything I'm going to go back and study and rewatch it over and over again.
I can probably watch it a few more times. I'll probably get the 4K when it comes out.
Right.
My wife didn't get a chance to see it with me. She's kind of bummed. I don't think I'll go back and watch it in the theaters. It's like, it's a good one, maybe 2 or 3 time watch for me. It's not going to get as many watches as the original Japanese Godzilla.
No, not at all. I mean, or even the original King Kong for that matter.
Well, yeah. I mean, can't compare those movies. No.
But yeah, I mean, again, I'm not disappointed.
No, there's a lot of Godzilla fans that I've seen online. They say this is like the worst movie of the year. I mean, I mean, I haven't seen it, but after hearing all the praise for Godzilla -1, and then you get that, yeah. Well,
I mean, I can see where people might be disappointed.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that because I wanted to talk about Godzilla -1 for a little bit, and you might want to plug your ears, Adam, because I'm going to probably reveal some.
I don't mind. I'll still
spoilers.
watch it when I get a chance to.
Well, that's the thing. Like, while Legendary teamed up with Toho to do Godzilla here in the United States, 10 years ago now. It's been 10 years since we got that first Legendary Toho collaboration. Mm-hmm. So while Legendary and Toho were working together on that, Toho was working on doing their own Godzilla stuff. Mm-hmm. Back in 2016, this is one you probably should see before Godzilla -1 is Shin Godzilla. Have you heard about that one?
I haven't heard about that one.
It's pretty epic, man. Again, it's an over 2-hour running time, but it wasn't like, these overbloated Hollywood productions where you're just like, oh, did we really need that? Was that really necessary? Every scene in these movies were necessary. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I think it's like Shin Godzilla is like a 2-hour, 5-minute movie.
Okay.
But Godzilla -1 was a huge surprise. I know they had some teaser trailers revealed early in 2023, and they even released some short Godzilla movies. I don't know if you saw those. So those were kind of cool. You could probably look them up somewhere. I mean, Toho, they were on YouTube for like a day, and then Toho just went.
Yeah.
Because that's what Toho does.
Right, yeah.
So Godzilla -1 has nothing to do with the Legendary American productions, okay? It actually takes place before the 1954 film. Mm-hmm. So basically, World War II is near the end. There's this kamikaze pilot, and he's at the Japanese base on Odo Island, and the lead mechanic deduces that he has fled from his duty by feigning technical issues because, the kamikazes, and that's the thing. The movie literally starts off this way.
Yeah.
A kamikaze pilot doesn't want to die. So he
wow.
Well, I know, but again, that's a big deal in Japan.
It is, yes.
Their
I
culture,
understand that, yeah.
Their culture, you skirt that, you're disgraced.
Yeah, you are.
So while he's there, and the mechanic is like, "Oh, dude, you're just trying to get out of this." Lead mechanic's a tough character that will be a recurring guy throughout the movie. So that night, Godzilla attacks that garrison. They expect this kamikaze pilot to get inside and destroy Godzilla because he had this big missile thing that could have probably scared Godzilla away, but he gets scared. And again, he's going to be feeling ashamed and disgraced because all of that garrison dies except for the lead mechanic. Mm-hmm. he's disgraced. He freezes up. He literally has Godzilla in his sights on that island, and he just freezes. And he jumps out of the airplane, and Godzilla destroys it. And where he could have actually probably scared Godzilla, but wouldn't have really made too much of a dent because Godzilla, you know.
Godzilla, yeah.
The kamikaze pilot returns home to find his parents were killed, and he's got that survivor's guilt. Of course, his neighbors are not too happy because they know he's back. He's not supposed to return.
Right.
So he meets this woman whose parents also died in a bombing, and she decides to like care for this orphan baby her parents had died being bombed as well. So they kind of they're like I don't know if Island of Misfit Toys is a good thing, but he has his parents' house still. So they kind of use that house, all three of them, and try to raise this girl. And slowly throughout the movie, he starts, he still is plagued by that survivor's guilt. Mm-hmm. He becomes a minesweeper in the ocean, just finding mines that were planted out there to blow up ships and everything like that. So we go from 1945 to 1947. He and the minesweeper crew travel to these different islands, and they're tasked with trying to again find these naval mines. But all of a sudden, he sees Godzilla again, and this time around, though, he actually tries to use the mines to try to blow up Godzilla, and he actually succeeds, but it really doesn't do much. So with that, he, along with the rest of the minesweeping crew, they try to get together and try to figure out what can they do. And this is the big plot point that I was like really surprised that they focused on. The Japanese government, they try to plea for them, and the Japanese government doesn't want to deal with any more embarrassment, so they don't want to help. They try to plead with England. They won't help. They try to plead with the United States. They won't help. So they kind of, former officers in World War II, they get together, and they're kind of like, we need to get together to stop this. And this former general is just like, if you don't want to be part of it, I understand. You've got family, but we're not getting any help here. So we got to, if you want to do this, we got to do it together. And that's the powerful part of the movie. I mean, you're expecting like a cheesy Godzilla movie, okay?
Right.
But it's actually just as emotional, just as impactful as the original Japanese Godzilla. So yeah, they're frustrated by the government's inaction. One of the minesweepers crew devises this plan, kind of like a naval engineer, but he's also a scientist. They come up with a plan by luring it out to Sagami Bay before surrounding it with Freon tanks and rupturing them, lowering all of the buoyancy of the water and all the scientific crap here, but basically letting the water pressure crush it. Now, should the plan fail, they do have a plan B here. Their plan B is balloons inflating under Godzilla to force the monster back up, killing it through explosive decompression. Talk about like a lot of work, a lot of science, a lot of work. But this is the Godzilla of the old. This is when Godzilla was evil,
right?
But you take a look at Godzilla, and he's mad.
Yeah.
He's mad at what man has done with war and all these nuclear testing. And that's the reason why Godzilla was made in the first place. Ishiro Honda, who was working with Kurosawa, it was like his assistant, he decided they worked together on what would become Godzilla in 1954. And it was supposed to be like a one-time thing. And, of course, it...
Well, yeah, I mean, Godzilla was kind of like the champion of all those 50s and late 40s sci-fi, the atomic age monsters, the repercussions of using nuclear weapons and nuclear technology, and Godzilla just kind of reigned supreme of all those monsters. I mean, we're not seeing 40 tarantula movies.
No. And we've got, I think, a dozen King Kong movies if you add them up all together, but they're not connected at all.
Right.
Whereas the first 14 Godzilla movies are all connected.
Yeah.
Kind of. This one was just a huge surprise to me. And there's even a plan C, kind of a plan C, because the kamikaze pilot, before all of this even happens, while they're planning and stuff like this, the woman he meets with the abandoned girl, she actually gets to witness Godzilla firsthand because she's hearing all this stuff from him. She actually witnesses it firsthand when she's going back and forth to her work and she sees Godzilla just destroy the whole city. He's meeting her, trying to rescue her. And then through all of because of his tail, he creates like a tornado effect. Mm-hmm. Rather than him rescuing her, she pushes him into an alley and she gets swept away. So again, he's got that guilt, like, I did it again. He's got even more guilt because he actually was starting to fall in love with her, and his coworkers were just like, hey, ask her to be your wife, dude. What are you doing? You're shaming her, because that's, again, Japanese culture.
Right.
Living together with a woman, raising a child, they don't have any kind of relationship, you know? So there's all sorts of guilt in this guy. He decides, because that lead mechanic, after his entire garrison was destroyed, that lead mechanic gives him all of the passports, all of the tags for that entire garrison as a reminder of his shameful act. So he literally puts in an ad to lure that guy out, because that guy, he's kind of cut off, and he comes back and finds a plane. The whole plan with the kamikaze guys, he's going to lure Godzilla where that trap is set in the sea, in the ocean there, and boom, you know?
Right.
So none of those plans work, okay? Again, this is a spoiler alert. So the kamikaze pilot, because he thinks at this point that that woman is dead, he left a bunch of money for that little girl who's his adopted daughter, left a note. So he's thinking, I'm going to really be a kamikaze this time. That was his plan.
Yeah.
So he literally flies into the mouth of Godzilla, releases that big missile right inside, and boom, luckily he survives. And then what happens when that happens, somehow when all of the other mines get let up and you think Godzilla sinks to the bottom and everything like that, yay, kind of temporary, because before the credits roll, you see him kind of reforming again. Mm-hmm. But they all work together. That wasn't the message to completely destroy Godzilla for good, because you can't.
Right.
But they took care of business and they're okay for now. Quite the difference in plot, story, character development than what we witnessed with the Legendary film.
Right.
So it would have been cool to have that movie come out last year and have Godzilla -1 come out this year. That's like a true honorary 70th anniversary tribute to Godzilla.
Right.
But instead we got the Godzilla X Kong New Empire, which is not bad. Mm-hmm. You know, I put it on par with some of the, the 90s Godzilla. And actually, that purplish, pinkish design was kind of like Godzilla 2000 era.
Yep.
And which it kind of, there's some cool tributes, but I mean, they're two different universes, and I'm really getting tired of the different universes, Monsterverse, and
right.
And I think the audiences are starting to get tired of that as well, because even though it's on its way to making probably 100 million, it's not going to make as much as Godzilla versus Kong or its predecessor, The King of the Monsters.
No, I don't think so either. And again, as far, my opinion is, Kong versus Godzilla was good. It was still just a one-time watch for me, and this is in the same category. I mean, it was a fun movie night, but will I revisit it another time? Probably not, unless it just happens to be on TV or something, or in the background, and maybe watch a couple minutes of it. But so, I mean, it's still fun to see these the King Kong and Godzilla character on a big screen, despite. Yeah. It's a CGI fest. You might as well be watching a cartoon.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, again, I can dedicate a whole episode to how I feel about CGI and fake blood, but we won't get into that today.
Right. Well, I agree. I agree, because that was the fun part of watching the later King Kong movies, the Godzilla movies. Yes, it was a monster, but there was a guy, a real human being inside the suit.
Right.
And talk about an athletic. I mean, that guy who was in all of the Showa era Godzilla movies, to say he was quite the athletic guy is saying it's not giving the guy enough credit,
Right. Listen, I don't care how good computers are and become, and evolve. Nothing will ever beat practical. Nothing will ever beat seeing something in real life and knowing that you can touch something in real life. The last live action Ninja Turtle, for a perfect example, the one with Megan Fox and Steve Amell, Arrow. The turtles looked terrible. I will take that 1990 movie and those rubber costumes
with real people
any day, any decade over that, and you can't beat real.
No.
Reference Dark Knight a lot. One thing I really appreciated about Chris Nolan doing that was he used as little CGI as he could.
Right.
With the exception of literally taking out a chunk of Aaron Eckhart's face for Two-Face. That was a practical makeup on him. Unfortunately, it's something that we're losing a lot of in movies today. But it also makes me excited for something like Beetlejuice coming out later this year because both Michael Keaton and Tim Burton have said repeatedly and confidently that this movie is going to be just like the original and it's going to be stop animation and practical effects. So
that's one thing
I'm excited for.
I'll always give Tim Burton credit for focusing more on sets rather than visual effects, So going back, we were talking about budgets and how Hollywood just over bloats their budgets, And I can understand the Marvel movies because you're paying, actors,
right.
Robert Downey Jr., he commands millions of dollars. But let's take a look at the budget for Godzilla X Kong, the New Empire. Apparently, the budget was approximately $135 million. Oof. So it's got to, between all the advertising and stuff, it's probably going to make it like $400 or $500 million.
Right.
Which that's going to be hard for that movie to do. Let's take a look at Godzilla -1. The budget for that is between 10 and 12 million. And like you look at the effects in both movies, and it's like Godzilla -1 pops a whole lot more.
Right.
It's just the design, even the CGI design of the creature pops better than the $135 million budget,
Right.
And the box office, just in the United States alone, it made almost $113 million.
Yeah.
$100 million more than its budget.
Unbelievable.
It's just too bad we can't get back to practical effects. And the guy who won the Oscar for American Fiction, the screenwriter for that, he said, let's try to get back to like making like 10, 20 to $30 million movies rather than making one or two hundreds of millions of dollar movies. And I kind of agree with him on that because, it's good to have a big blockbuster once in a while, but you can have a lot of fun with a $30 to $40 million budget, even $50
absolutely.
million.
It's, you just got to know how to make a movie.
Right.
And be creative. That's the art of it. It's being that creative and, figuring out those problems and, making your audience believe it. Again, if now $100 million for a movie that has the majority of it, I would say, of the 2-hour movie that we just watched, an hour and a half of it was all CGI. So how much money? How expensive is CGI? To create. That's insane. It's insane. You're a computer program.
Right. Now, comparing the directors, Adam Wingard is obviously like a fanboy of the Godzilla movies because there's a lot of homages to past Kong and Godzilla movies, which is okay. But you watch Godzilla -1, Takashi Yamazaki is maybe a fanboy himself, but he loves the character, and you can tell he loves the whole world of Godzilla, and it just you literally felt something watching Godzilla -1.
Right.
You really didn't. Godzilla X Kong, the New Empire. If you've worked a 12-hour day and you want to watch something, it's a fun one to watch. I did enjoy this more than Frozen Empire, but not by much though.
I'm a bigger Ghostbusters fan than I am a Godzilla and King Kong fan. So I'm gonna default back to Ghostbusters. But yeah, I mean both of them. I mean they're not the greatest movies in the world. They're not the greatest movies of this year. But they're fun movies to watch. It's a good date night for either movie.
Right. I mean, I agree with you on Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire. Do agree with you on that one. So they're going to make more Godzilla movies, and that was one thing delving into the features on my different Godzilla discs. As long as there is smugness, prideful people, there will always be Godzilla.
All right.
It's so true. It's so true because Godzilla just he stands up to all of the crap in the world. I know it's kind of a lame statement, but it's true. Because you watch all of the 40 plus Godzilla movies out there, and he's fighting back against some sort of idiocracy that's created by our fellow humans.
Right.
So. But hey, let's get philosophies and meanings of the stories aside. If you're looking to have a fun time, it is disappointing if you're a fan of Godzilla or Kong. It really is a step down, especially if you were a fan of Godzilla -1. You watch the actual Japanese Godzilla movies, the ones made in Japan. It's like night and day. If you like those movies, you're going to be severely disappointed, like you have been with the rest of the legendary Godzilla movies. But it's still a fun time. I know I'm a movie snob, but I have a special place in my heart for Godzilla because I grew up with both King Kong and Godzilla. Been watching those movies since I was just a little guy. So, and I will continue to watch their movies. Some I will like better than others. This one is, near the bottom for me, but it's still, I'll probably watch it a couple more times. Godzilla, X Kong, The New Empire, but it's going to be harder if you really want to see Godzilla -1. I think there might be 1 or 2 different streaming platforms for that one. That's the unfortunate thing is Toho. They've released an awesome 4K Blu-ray box set of Godzilla -1. And you can buy it. If you have a region-free player, you can buy it. It'll play in your regular 4K player. It'll be in Japanese, but there will be no English subtitles. That's Toho. They've been doing that with all their movies. They've released a 4K version of the original Godzilla movie. No English subtitles, though. So Toho does this all the time.
About those Americans.
Well, that's their saying, because if you look back at there's been kind of there's some tension with Hollywood here, because they gave Godzilla, the original one, 1954, to America, and they cut it up. They re-edited the movie, took out the major actors, and stuck in Raymond Burr and some Japanese-American actor. Which, it was still entertaining, but the heart of the story was about the nuclear energy. It wasn't just... Because there was some criticism of America, but they weren't just criticizing America. They were criticizing themselves, their own government. Yeah. They're just criticizing nuclear bombs as a whole. And they cut out all of those elements, which made the original Godzilla a powerhouse, because up until 2004, we couldn't see that original Godzilla movie, in this country anyways, because of Toho.
Yeah. Well,
they were upset.
Hollywood did what Hollywood does.
Yeah. So they had some fun with Toho had some fun with King Kong there for a little while, and King Kong versus Godzilla. Then that King Kong escapes with a Mecha Kong. Yeah. Did you ever watch that?
I've seen that.
I haven't seen that one yet, but it looked pretty dreadful. It looked pretty dreadful. Yeah. But Toho was not very happy with that, and you got to remember, 1998, Hollywood had another try at Godzilla, and that was a disaster.
Right.
And I love how they take, I think it was either Godzilla 2000 or one of the other Toho movies. They take that Godzilla and they destroy him within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
If Hollywood screws up Godzilla, no worries, because we'll still get more Godzilla movies. It just won't be the same ideas. Again, Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire. It's not going to rank very high on a lot of people's Godzilla or King Kong's lists, but it is I can think of worse ways to kill 2 hours.
Yeah, like I said, great date movie. Go watch Good Monster Brawl.
That's right. And some good WWE moves as well. So let us know what you think. Did you watch Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire? Comment. We're on YouTube, Facebook. We're on Twitter X, Instagram. Reach out. Let us know what you think. And we want to know how we're doing as well, because we just started doing this back in November. So we want to know what you think. And if you got some feedback, we know you're not bashful. Let us know.
We'll see you next time on Scared for Reals.